Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on venturing sustainably, doing well while doing good. My name is Leonie Baldacchino. I am the director of the Edward de Bono Institute here at the University of Malta, and also the national host for Global Entrepreneurship Week here in Malta. So for those of you who aren't too familiar with this initiative, the Global Entrepreneurship Week initiative, it was initiated way back in 2008, and since then the Institute has been the host for a program of events here locally. Although I have to admit that the name Global Entrepreneurship Week has become a bit of a misnomer, because over the years it's grown so much that we now have events and activities in over 180 countries, over 40,000 events engaging approximately 10 million people. And as you can imagine, it's quite difficult to fit all of that in a single week. So events tend to stretch over approximately 2 or 3 weeks, sometimes even a month. If you would like to share on social media your participation in this webinar, please use these two hashtags, hashtag GW2021 and hashtag GW Malta. And as I was saying, the initiative has grown considerably, and we are now a part of the Global Entrepreneurship Network, which essentially brings together all the key players that are involved, not only in Global Entrepreneurship Week, but in entrepreneurship initiatives in general throughout the year, all under this movement that has grown out of this initial one-week event that used to take part in 2008, 2009 and beyond. So a few words about today's program. We will start with, after my brief introduction, I will give you a brief overview of what we understand by sustainable entrepreneurship, sustainable venturing, particularly the three P's and the triple bottom line. After that, I will invite Dr Roberta Lepre to give us an overview of Malta's social entrepreneurship ecosystem. And she will also be telling us a little bit about the Social Entrepreneurs Association in Malta, which is a partner in today's event. So thank you to SEAM for collaborating with us in organizing this event. We'll then move on to the panel discussion. We'll start with a 30 minutes panel discussion, followed by a brief break. Then we'll carry on with more questions, after which I will invite questions from the audience. As you can see, we have adopted a webinar mode for today's event, meaning that attendees can see and hear the panelists, provided of course that our cameras and mics are turned on, but attendees cannot see each other and we can't see you except your names in the attendees list. However, if you would like to ask questions, you may use the raise hand function and I will enable your microphone, or you may simply type your questions, your comments into the chat box or into the Q&A box, and I can ask those questions on your behalf. So whichever way you feel more comfortable, please go ahead. We will then conclude with a few final reflections. I am very pleased to introduce our esteemed guests in alphabetical order, starting with Dr. Nico De Klerk from South Africa. So Nico has a very interesting story to tell us about a long walk, a very long walk that he did a couple of years ago across South Africa, and all the entrepreneurial initiatives associated with that project and how he's taking it forward. Dr. Roberta Lepre, who is the founder and managing consultant at Weave Consulting. Hi, Roberta, thank you for joining us. She's also the project director at SEAM. Ms. Patrizia Patti, who is the founder at Eco Marine Malta and assistant treasurer at SEAM. Dr. Viviana Premazzi, who is the founder of Global Mindset Development and the treasurer at SEAM. Ms. Annalisa Schembri, who is a freelance artistic director, creative producer, event manager, and active citizen. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Michael Vogt, who is the founder and managing director at the Clean Beauty based in Spain. So thank you all very much for taking the time to join us this evening. We look forward to discussing social, environmental, and sustainable entrepreneurship with you in a little while. But first, I would like to begin with a brief introduction to sustainable entrepreneurship. And I'd like to begin my introductions with a few definitions. Okay, so although I'm quite sure that most of you know what sustainable entrepreneurship is about, more or less, I thought it would help to begin with the basics, just so that we all have a common departure point, so to speak. So starting with a couple of quotations from the literature, I like to define sustainable entrepreneurship in Mazarell's words, and he describes, or he defines, so sustainable entrepreneurship as a combination of creating sustainable development on the one hand and entrepreneurship on the other. The second definition relates to sustainable entrepreneurs per se, and Krals and Verriek define these individuals or companies, actually, so these are individuals who run companies that contribute to sustainable development by doing business in a sustainable way. But this begs the question, what is sustainability and what is sustainable development? You may be familiar with the definition that was introduced by the World Commission on Environment and Development way back in 1987, which is that sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So this is a concept that derives from the awareness that our natural resources are finite, and that human activity has a huge impact on the natural environment. So this definition, or the notion of sustainable development, is focused on future needs as well as present needs. So it's not all about taking, using, disposing everything that we can today, but we also need to think about the future, because otherwise there will not be a future left for future generations. So this concept of sustainable entrepreneurship really is a spin-off from sustainable development, and it combines business. It's about doing business in a way that respects these underlying principles of sustainable development and promotes these principles. You may be familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals that were introduced by the UN a few years ago. I won't go into any detail because I would like to leave as much time as possible to the panel discussion, but I thought it would be relevant to at least show you a slide with the Sustainable Development Goals, because we might be relating to a few of them as we go along. In the title of my talk, I refer to the 3 Ps of sustainable entrepreneurship. I don't mention the triple bottom line, but they are very related. So generally, when we think of entrepreneurship, we think of business that is out there to make a profit. Okay, so that is the traditional model of entrepreneurship. So starting up and running a business in order to do well financially, to generate revenues, to generate profits. And that is the third P in my list here. It is the for-profit, the financial dimension. Sustainable entrepreneurship is about a lot more than that. It does include revenue generation. It does include commercial activity. Okay, so when we talk about sustainable entrepreneurship or its subcomponents, social entrepreneurship or environmental entrepreneurship, we are not talking about charities. Okay, we are not talking about simply an NGO that is raising funds simply through handouts or through donations. With social entrepreneurship, there is commercial activity going on. There is revenue generation. However, in addition to that, there would also be a for people aim or vision, or a for planet aim or vision. Okay, so the 3 Ps of sustainable entrepreneurship are people, or the social dimension, planet or the environmental dimension, and profit, the financial dimension. Now, in theory, authors, especially earlier papers, earlier research about sustainable entrepreneurship, used to argue for what they referred to as the golden mean. The golden mean would be a balance, an equal balance between these three P's. Okay, so in order to be a sustainable entrepreneur, they used to argue, one should have an equal balance of care for the environment, care for society, but also making a profit. Later views, however, realized that it's never really quite the case. There is always a little bit of a trade-off. Okay, so you would have entrepreneurs who are primarily people-oriented. Okay, so those are the social entrepreneurs. You would have other entrepreneurs who are more environmentally oriented. So those would be the eco-entrepreneurs or the environmental entrepreneurs. And then you would have entrepreneurs who are primarily profit-oriented, but still respecting or integrating elements of the other two P's. Okay, so sustainable entrepreneurship is a bit of an umbrella term that encompasses all of those. But I'm going to repeat this element of the revenue because many people in the social entrepreneurship or the sustainable entrepreneurship space tend to view the profit or the financial element as something that they don't like very much. You know, we're not out here to make money, we're not here to make a profit, we're here to do good. However, I keep stressing that in order to do good, you also need to be doing well. Okay, so the theme of today's webinar is doing well while doing good, but also doing good while doing well. So it's a bit of a two-way relationship, I like to see it. And this brings me then to the notion of the triple bottom line. And the triple bottom line here suggests that organizational performance should not only be measured on financial measures, right, or financial factors, but also on their social and environmental impact. So normally when we talk about the bottom line, we're just looking at the financial performance of the company. However, if we take the triple bottom line approach, it's not enough to do well financially. We also now need to start looking at how businesses are also contributing to society and to the environment. And unfortunately, businesses have been viewed with some blame, I would say, as the cause rather than the solution of many of the world's social and environmental problems. But I strongly believe, and I know I am not the only one, there is a growing movement that strongly believes that entrepreneurs can really contribute positively to the three P's, and can perform well on this triple bottom line. So I said that I wanted to keep this as brief as possible, so I'm going to conclude by why bother. There are many, many reasons why entrepreneurs should be bothered with sustainability, even if their main aim, or even if they didn't start off initially wanting to be social entrepreneurs or wanting to be environmental entrepreneurs, they can still be profit-oriented entrepreneurs while still doing good. Okay, and the reasons are quite varied. I mean, there are reasons associated with legislation. We know that as time goes by, more and more legislation and regulations are being introduced that would, for example, introduce additional financial burdens for non-compliance with certain environmental regulations. There are also PR reasons for appearing to be more sustainability oriented, because many people are becoming much more aware that the environment is important, that it's important to be socially oriented. So there is a growing awareness and a growing market, I would say, for sustainable products and services. Ultimately, I always like to say that doing well and doing good is what enables us to be doing great. And on that note, I thank you for your attention to my brief introduction, and I would now like to hand over to Dr. Roberta Lepre for her presentation.
So thanks so much. I think what I will be sharing ties very well with what Leonie has just presented. Just by way of introduction, my name is Roberta. I'm a lawyer by profession. And I have worked in different sectors throughout my career. So I started off working in a traditional law firm just for a short while. And then after that, I moved on to the public sector, the Commission for Equality, where I thought, I could really create change. Quickly realized that working in government departments and the bureaucracy that comes with that is not very conducive towards making change. So I thought, oh, I know what now. I'll move on to the non-profit sector because that's where the real activists work. And sure enough, after a number of years working in that sector as well, I realized that sector has a number of limitations, unfortunately. So change and progress happens very slowly there as well. So I came full circle and I really came to the realization that for things to change, one really needs to engage with the business community, because it's the business community which is the engine of society. I mean, good or bad, whether the change is positive or negative, but that's where change happens. So this is essentially sort of very briefly my journey of how I set up with consulting and started working with mainstream businesses, really, not with social entrepreneurs. So our original service offering was to work with mainstream businesses to help them understand the concept of sustainability, help them understand what's in it for them, so why they should become more sustainable, and then how to do it, because a lot of entrepreneurs are conscious both from a social and environmental point of view, but very often they don't know what to do and how to do it. So that's where we come in and help them. And this led me to do other things as well. So a couple of years ago, I joined a team of experts where together we worked on a project which was called Anisia. It was an Interreg project, so it was funded by the European Union. We had cross-border partners, specifically partners from Sicily, and there we analyzed what kind of activity is going on locally in terms of social innovation and social entrepreneurship. So this is what I'm going to be sharing with you today. Like Leonie, I'm very fond of definitions. So I do like to start my presentations with those. So first of all, what is the social economy? Because social entrepreneurs are players within the social economy, but what is the social economy? So traditionally, we're looking at associations, cooperatives, organizations, and foundations whose activity is primarily driven by values of solidarity, the primacy of people over capital, and also democratic and participative governance. This is a criterion which we tend to overlook very often. I think even the legislator, when they have drafted the proposed Social Enterprise Act locally, they've missed this part of the definition. And then social innovation. What do we mean by social innovation? So new ideas which meet social needs, create social relationships, and form new collaborations. And the innovations can be products, they can be services, but they can also be new ways of doing things. So it could be the same thing that has been done in the past, but just done in a different way. So that is social innovation. Ultimately, it is about adding value. So identifying a problem in society and coming up with a solution to that problem at the end of the day. And then social enterprise. So a social enterprise is an operator within the social economy whose main objective is to have an impact rather than make a profit. So here we're looking at the impact being prioritized over profit making. But as Leonie said, the profit making aspect is really important. And I think this cannot be stressed enough, because now with my work with social entrepreneurs, I notice that sometimes the social entrepreneur is so engaged with the cause that they wish to contribute towards, that sometimes they don't look at the other side of actually running the business. But that would mean that their impact is limited, or else that the longevity is being put at risk as well. So having a solid and sustainable financial or economic basis to what one is doing, I think it's extremely important. Going forward with the definition, we're looking at providing goods and services for the market in an entrepreneurial and innovative fashion. So here is, I think, where perhaps the contrast with being a non-profit comes along. So a non-profit organization is not necessarily always entrepreneurial, not necessarily always innovative either. They can be, but very often they rely on charity or on grants or on some kind of relationship as well with the state. Okay, whereas an entrepreneur, a social entrepreneur, is creating revenue through the provision of those innovative products or services. And the primary objective is to achieve the social aims. Again, the management needs to be open, responsible, and it should involve in the process the employees, the consumers, and the different stakeholders who are overall affected by the commercial activity of the enterprise. Now, I'd like to share this quote by Anita Roddick, who is the founder of The Body Shop, for those who may not be familiar with her. She wrote a number of books, but one of them is called Business as Usual. And I like this quote within her book. So she's saying, in terms of power and influence, you can forget about the church, forget politics. There is no more powerful institution in society than business. The business of business should not be about money, it should be about responsibility. It should be about public good, not private greed. So I think Roddick, I don't know if the term existed or not yet back in 2000, but probably she was a social entrepreneur. So she already has this mindset of, yes, creating a sustainable venture, but having the overall social and environmental, in her case, aims, which precede the profit-making aims. And then the sustainable development goals. So the social economy is, I suppose, the context or the playing field within which all the different actions which will help us hopefully to achieve the sustainable development goals, where the action is happening, so to speak. And the social entrepreneurs, the social innovators, are the ones that can come up with the innovative solutions that can help us achieve these goals. So what's happening locally? As I mentioned in the Anisia project, which I was involved in, we also did a study. We analyzed the Maltese social enterprise ecosystem, also compared it to that in Sicily. And this is what we found, essentially. So we have a good number of limited liability companies, NGOs, cooperatives, and also self-employed individuals who identify as social entrepreneurs. So we already have quite a thriving community, if you like, of social entrepreneurs. The majority tend to provide services, a smaller number provide products, and then an even smaller number offer both products and services. Unsurprisingly, the majority of them are micro businesses, so businesses which employ 9 people or less. I dare guess that the majority would employ 2 people or less. We found that there isn't enough knowledge about social innovation. So although one would perhaps be already involved in social innovation, they don't necessarily understand what the term means. We also found that the majority already collaborate with each other, with other entities, even entities which are not necessarily social entrepreneurs or social innovators. Many, a good number, are very much interested in the concept of collaborating with other enterprises in other countries. The majority rely on private investment for startup. And when I say private investment here, it's not some angel investor or a business angel. It would be themselves, their own savings, mainly. When we asked them what kind of support they would need to help them be more engaged in social innovation, they mentioned business mentoring and coaching as the #1 support service, which would help them do better. And then also, unsurprisingly, we found that a lack of financial resources was the main barrier which hindered further innovation and growth. So it's important that we have schemes and grants in place to help these social innovators come up with more solutions and then also be able to scale their social innovations. We also did a sort of SWOT analysis of the ecosystem, and we found a number of strengths. So we found, for example, that there are entities locally which already provide support to entrepreneurs, like the Life Sciences Park, for example. They already support entrepreneurs, not necessarily social entrepreneurs, but there is already this idea of supporting some enterprises. In terms of social innovators who are non-profit organizations, there's the Malta Council for the Voluntary Sector. We have thousands of non-profits in Malta. Many of them have the potential of becoming social enterprises. And we have the council who already has a direct link with all of these stakeholders. We now have also the research, which we needed to be able to develop new services for the sector. I think this is really important, something I believe in a lot, because very often we jump to creating support services or schemes without having an evidence base for that. So I think this project was really important in that sense. And also the fact that Malta is really well placed to be able to foster cross-border collaboration, especially when it comes to collaboration between European countries and also African countries. And there is quite a drive now to create this kind of cross-border collaboration. In terms of strength, we found that there already exists a strong focus on community building within the social economy locally. We have a good link already, a good relationship with Malta Enterprise, and that could facilitate access to the existing services and schemes. We also created this link with the Impact Hub in Syracuse, which could once again help us come up with collaborative initiatives also with Sicily, and also with an organization called Microfinanza, which essentially provides micro loans to social enterprises, and potentially local social entrepreneurs could also tap into this support service. The strong links that we have with university and with MCAST, and that can facilitate access to interns who can be extremely helpful, especially at the startup stage. It looks like now also we have the political will to support the creation of this ecosystem. So we've heard quite a bit lately about social enterprise. So we're hoping to have more support coming up shortly. And also to a certain extent, we already have access to public funding, which can also help us address national goals also within the context of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We do have a number of weaknesses as well. So we don't have much experience in this specific sector. We don't have a legal and policy framework on social innovation or on social enterprise. So I think Malta is probably the only European country which doesn't have a social enterprise act. So locally, one cannot yet register as a social enterprise. But that is being addressed. We have a large number of competitors in the sense that there are a number of service providers for entrepreneurs, both public and private. That could be a weakness to a certain extent, unless we find a way to make sure everybody works together in this regard. We also know that public sector procedures can sometimes slow us down. there is no specific support service for social enterprises. There is some kind of support for enterprises in general, but social enterprises tend to be very particular. So it would be useful to have some kind of specialized support service or as well grants for social enterprises. And we don't really have the concept yet of private investors, business angels and investors in general, but even less in social enterprise. Which leads me to a number of opportunities that we have. Very often when we have challenges, we also have great opportunities. The opportunities we have are primarily, it looks like the demand for products and services which have a positive impact is growing, and the trend is that it will continue to grow. So the consumer out there will be expecting businesses to be ethical, to have a positive impact, and to be mindful of the 3 Ps, which Leonie rightly mentioned in the beginning. In Malta, we have the potential of being a very unique and authentic boutique service provider in the area of social innovation, even when then contrasted with other hubs, both locally and abroad, who are more generic. They don't specifically focus on social innovation. There aren't many established players in the provision of specialized social innovation services, neither locally nor internationally, so that's an opportunity there. There is the opportunity to create more international collaboration, especially with our neighboring countries like Sicily. We could join a franchise like Impact Hub, which is a network of ecosystems, so to speak, for social enterprises across the world. We could also tap into this idea of community building, which seems to be quite dear to the social entrepreneurs out there, and build on that. Then we can also use the concept of co-design to create the space and then guide tenants for themselves to be able to design a physical space themselves. So these are the opportunities that we have identified. Some more opportunities here. As opposed to other hubs, which would provide mentoring or guidance when it comes to doing certain things, there is the opportunity to provide the service directly to the client. So actual do-it-for-you services, things like your business plan, your marketing plan, and actual services that the entrepreneur might need. We could also potentially create alliances with private sector operators, so that could give us enhanced attractiveness and credibility. We have a huge opportunity as well to attract digital nomads, within the context of social innovation. And we could use social innovation as a specific niche of focus to also attract international enterprises who would be setting up here in Malta. We would need to be able to provide access to capital and funding. And lastly, we could create a membership to community members who would opt to be part of a community, but not necessarily want to use a physical space and in terms of ecosystem. So the ecosystem does not necessarily entail having a physical space, but it could be also a sort of virtual community. Some threats as well. So the existing hubs and incubators might be perceived more appealing because they are more established. Also, when it comes to tapping into foreign markets, one needs to fully understand these markets. So there's a little bit of a challenge there as well. Also when it comes to attracting and recruiting employees with the right skills, we all know how difficult and challenging that is. So these are the threats which we identified in the research. Going forward, I'd like to also tie in to what Leonie mentioned. So as time goes by, there is this expectation that all businesses need to have a positive impact on society and the environment. Larry Fink, for those of you who are familiar with him, he's the CEO of a huge investment firm called BlackRock. And for the past few years, he has been really vocal when it comes to sustainability within businesses. And in 2018, he actually predicted that within 5 years of 2018, the actual value of a company would be directly proportional to its impact on society and the environment. So any business now, not just social enterprises, but any business which is doing the opposite, is having a negative impact on either society or the environment, would be losing attractiveness in terms of who would want to invest in that business. So now we're looking at a total shift in mindset. So whereas traditionally the mindset is to create value for shareholders, we are now looking at creating value for the wider stakeholders. And the 3 Ps, which Leonie mentioned, so I won't be repeating here. What I do want to say, however, is something which might be not so pleasant to state, but I think it's the reality. I think, unfortunately, when a business or any kind of organization just focuses on one of these 3 pillars, so the profit pillar, for example, there are always 3 pillars, so there are always different dimensions. But what will be happening is that they're actually stealing, if you like, from somebody else, because somebody will have to carry the cost of the environmental impact or the social impact. It's just that the bill gets picked up by somebody else. So that is why we talk a lot about this within the context of social responsibility. So if a business is polluting, it's going to create environmental harm. That environmental harm can also translate into social harm because of disease, for example, or illness within the community. And besides the social and well-being impact, there is also a financial impact to that. And it is very often someone else from outside the company who has to carry the cost of that. And then, sorry, this is a little bit blurred. This is from the Sustainability Index. Okay, so this gives us an indication on a yearly basis on how Malta is doing in relation to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. So the red dots are really the areas where we're not doing very well. The orange is a little bit better, the yellow better, and the green is better. So going back to what I mentioned in the beginning, social innovation and creating solutions to problems which we have, I would suggest or encourage aspiring entrepreneurs to look at the red dots, so where we have the biggest problems, the biggest challenges, and potentially come up with solutions which will help us go from red to green, hopefully. So that's it from me. Thank you very much. And I look forward to the rest of the discussion.
Thank you very much, Roberta. That was an excellent presentation with lots of food for thought. I agree with a lot of what you said, well, practically with everything that you were saying, especially your comment on the 3 Ps, how they are interrelated, and just because my company is focused on one particular P does not justify causing harm so like if I'm primarily a social entrepreneur, if I'm doing business for people, it doesn't justify then harming the environment, you know, because somebody else, as you're saying, is going to suffer the consequences. So although this golden mean that I mentioned is not so easy to achieve, there needs to be at least some consideration for all Ps in any business. You also mentioned Larry Fink, the CEO. I recently read an article on Paul Polman, who is the former CEO of Unilever, who speaks about net positive. So it's not about net zero, it's not about cancelling out harm, but it's actually creating positive impact, and all businesses should be creating positive impact. And just one last thing before we move on to the panel discussion. You were speaking about social innovation, and perhaps it would be good to since we are both fond of definitions, to clarify the difference between social entrepreneurship, sustainable entrepreneurship, and social innovation.
I would say social innovation is the product of social entrepreneurship. So social innovation would be potentially the outcome, what social entrepreneurs create.
Yes, but it doesn't have to be a social entrepreneur who creates a social innovation. You can get social innovation from many different...
Of course, yes. Yes.
Right? So we speak about innovation as being the implementation of a creative idea. A social innovation would be one that is socially oriented, but it doesn't have to be within the context of a startup, of a business, of a large organization.
No, of course not.
It could be the government. From an NGO, it could be simply a project, so there are a lot of different sources.
Of course.
Just so that we have these minor details clarified. Okay, so I think it's now time to move on to our panel discussion. I've already briefly introduced all of our panelists, so I will not repeat, because I would like to actually ask you to begin by telling us a little bit about yourselves. So Roberta, I think you've already given us a bit of background about yourself, right? But since we have you on the spot, maybe what inspired you to come into the social, to the CSR sphere from studying law?
Yes, I mentioned already a little bit towards the beginning of my presentation. So I really went like full circle, going from, private sector to public to non-profit and then back to private sector. But mainly what inspired me to do this was the time I spent sitting on a body, which is called the Guardian for Future Generations. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that. It's quite a high-level body, which is set up under the Sustainable Development Act in Malta. So if you look at the law, you think, wow, this body, this guardian has a lot of power and influence, and it's going to change the world, and make everyone and everything more sustainable. But when it came to actually implementing, unfortunately, we did not manage to achieve our mission because we did not have the right tools to be able to execute. It's not because there wasn't the drive, it's not because there wasn't the knowledge, but we didn't have the tools. And that's where I realized I really need to work with businesses to be able to bring about this change. Because as the Anita Roddick quote, I looked around me and I saw the huge changes, huge advancements that we have made as a country in other areas, because there was the drive and potentially also the lure, so to speak, of potentially profitability and gain from those changes. And I thought that would be a big driver to create that change. So what I did was sort of use the skills that I had developed throughout my career and also on the Guardian, and transpose that experience into the private sector, essentially.
Great.
So that was my inspiration.
Thanks, Roberta. I'd like to ask Ms. Patrizia Patti to tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, your business, and what inspired you.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for inviting me this evening. I'm Patrizia. I'm a marine biologist and an entrepreneur. I'm Italian and I'm living here in Malta since 2016. In 2018, after being awarded by the Maritime Seed Awards, I founded Eco Marine Malta. Eco Marine Malta can be considered a spin-off of another company that I founded in Italy, that is Costa Marine Whale Nature Watching, in 2013. The idea, the basic idea, is to merge science with the general public. Was what I always felt, and I still feel, is there is a gap, let's say, in the communication between scientists and the general public. So the idea was to find a common language to explain, to involve as many people as possible in the topic of the conservation. And so why to protect the environment, how to do it. For sure, an experience, it worth more than 1,000 words. And so I think that living a day in contact with the sea, maybe encountering these beautiful animals such as dolphins or birds, help people to understand the why. Why I have to use the bicycle instead of the car, why I have to pollute less, why I have to be more sustainable, to have a more sustainable life. And so, yes, I think that this experience can create a forever memory that you feel like, let's say, with the belly, not with the head. So you remember really why you have to be better. Moreover, as a company, we offer marine biologist courses for kids and adults, and we do also scientific research on the dolphin population that live around the Maltese island. Basically, what we can say, we found part of our research thanks to the people that choose to join us during our tours and buy our services. This is what we are.
Very interesting, thank you. So would you which of the P's would you consider yourself to be most closely aligned with? Is it the planet?
To be honest, planet, but also people, because I think that it's impossible to be sustainable or to respect the environment without respecting other people. So this is, I think, is really correlated, is 360 degrees vision. So in fact, I have also this as Eco Marine, being part of CIM, that is, I think, something that is 360 degrees, including my company. We have also this collaboration with Viviana Premazzi of Global Mindset Development, and we do these team building activities where we merge the environment with the respect for people and other cultures.
Oh, interesting. So on that note, Dr. Premazzi, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do as a company?
Yes, okay, so thank you very much for having me, and I'm also a member of SIAM, so very honored to be here and organize this together. I'm also Italian, moved to Malta in 2017, and I have also a story that is quite similar to what Roberta mentioned, so this, let's say, tour, because as many students in political science, I had my dream of working for the United Nations, and I managed to work for the United Nations in my first and second internship. And when I was in New York, I realized that, yeah, it was very slow. It took a lot of time to make decisions, and they were actually not so impactful as I wanted to be. And so when I came back, I decided that, one, I wanted to be the expert, able to provide like information and consultancy to the people that had to make the decision, and also to be more active. And so I also started to work in the academia, so university and also NGO and international organization again. But also that was not enough for me, because then you are kind of in your bubble, speaking to the same people that are already aware of the challenges, aware of the topics. And so actually when I moved to Malta, it was 2017, so also right after the refugee crisis and everything that was related to that, I also found Malta the right place and the right time for me to transform all my past and my experience and my knowledge in a business-to-business activity. So this is why I created Global Mindset Development. The words are really key for me, because the idea is not only help people to work across cultures or be culturally aware, but it's really help people to develop a mindset that is curious and open to the diversity, so that they don't have to fear the diversity, but they can enjoy. And in businesses, you find the diversity and you are actually forced to work together with your different clients and all the different identities. So you're forced to be there, you need to be productive together. And so these were my people. So the people that at that time when I started and still today, like I want to help. And then of course, still keeping collaborating with like university or NGO. But I think that yeah, I really want to reach everyone and help them to have the knowledge, the awareness, and the skills to understand, enjoy, and manage the diversity and the cultural differences, especially.
So in your case, would it be safe to say that your primary focus is on the people, the social aspect?
Yeah, like let's say we could say that, but at the same time, it's like Patrizia. So I think that we cannot also, yeah, you cannot think you respect the people and not respect the environment. This is also why, like, I'm coming from like studying on migration and integration, but something also I add to my business since the beginning is working on like social impact assessment, human rights impact assessment. So it's also important for the business not to consider only the environmental impact that they may have, but more and more the impact that they have on the community where they work, their employees, the community that the business will affect, and think globally also in this, like, or local, let's say local and global. So I think, yeah, mainly it starts from people, but of course we cannot forget the planet and the profit.
Thank you, Viviana. Nico, Dr. Nico De Klerk, would you like to build upon what Viviana has just been saying? Because I know that this notion of diversity and integration is also very close to your heart. So would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you have been doing in the social and entrepreneurship sphere?
I would like to start with the three concepts, and I've been listening to the word mindset. How many times, everybody has been using the word mindset. So that's exactly why that became sort of a focus for me. Given my background with entrepreneurship, work, development, and if I say that, I first go to grassroots level in South Africa, which we call townships here, which is the poorer communities. And then I've discovered the world's potential being captured in these spaces, and how to let that go. That asks for a lot of social entrepreneurial thinking. So what I also brought in is my studies in the spiritual world, specifically aimed at the concept of pilgrimage. So there's the three concepts, the pilgrimage, entrepreneurship, and mindset, and how to bring that together, how to bring that into one space. That is, for me, the absolutely most important thing of my life. So this brought me into the world of entrepreneurship, and why I've put this picture here, being national coordinator for entrepreneurship development in these areas, and then taking the South African team to the global entrepreneurship competition. This one was in Moscow, as you can see. And this is the team that really, they were my wake-up call. They were really my wake-up call a couple of years ago, when they managed to get the 4th place among 35 countries. And they are coming from a rural area, the so-called neglected areas, the township areas. And that night, after the announcement, I realized what is the absolutely immense potential in South Africa for entrepreneurship development, and that can address the whole social context. So that was against USA, China, Taiwan, you name it, Germany. They were all there, and they brought their best, and South Africa took children from our neglected educational areas. I want to emphasize that. So that really brought me to a standstill, and what to do with this information. The next year, the same happened in the Philippines, and then I got onto my own venture. I also have to complete my studies. Studies was about the pilgrimage, and here I've started the Camino in France. So the studies was focused on mindset and entrepreneurship and pilgrimage, and the Camino specifically, on that personal journey. So what brings about change in mindset? Because this is what we need for businesses as well, for government, for churches, for whatever. And this then really became my passion. Just a couple of slides just to show you an image talking to me about going into the unknown. And this is exactly what we have to do now, because even sustainability has to be redefined. It's looking different into the future than in the past. So images starts talking to me, opening up the road ahead. This is all from the Camino, just like the most beautiful scenes that you can imagine, experiences. And this is part of mindset renewal, mindset change. That's why people go there. They come to new solutions, decisions, and then you get to Finisterre at the end of the Camino. This was known as the end of the world, that spot there, for ages, until, you know, the ships went into the unknown and then discover other continents. That brought me back to South Africa. I sat down and designed this project. This was a walk of close to 3,000 kilometers. So I've started at the one capital, I've ended at the other one in Cape Town, and I visited all these communities, listening, learning, a lot of research going into that, sharing entrepreneurial knowledge, and pick up on the spirit of the youth, their thinking. That was a life-changing experience. There's just like two pictures of that, starting at the Nelson Mandela statue in Pretoria, ending at the other statue in Cape Town. Typical scenes at schools. Each and every school just opened up for me as I walked in there without any appointment. And they went out of their way to accommodate me, just to get an image of what it was like every day, walking, talking to educators, teachers, the learners, the unemployed, to see what can really make a difference. That ended up in me by writing this book that's going to be published soon with the title No Fit. Because in order to be a social entrepreneur, you should be able to fit nowhere, or that's your experience. But the other side of the coin is that you've also discovered that you fit everywhere. So you have to develop both skills. You have to fit nowhere in order to fit everywhere. So therefore, the title of the book is No Fit, and it's all about this walk with a possible front cover. Then the highlight, one of the highlights of my life was a visit to Malta. And by the way, I've got an Italian connection as well. My brother lives in Italy. You know, he's up in Verona now for 30 years. He's an Italian citizen. And my connection in there by Edward, the late Edward de Bono, how will we miss him, in 2019, got the award for the best social innovative project from the Life Learning Academia, which was, I don't have to say more. It was just a thrill to be there and meet all of you. Then within a couple of months, the appointment at Princeton University in the USA, New Jersey, in spiritual theology, which is building upon all the things that I've already mentioned. A huge privilege. Where did I learn the most? Nature, planet, people. Yeah, sometimes I just like spend too much. I can't say that I'm into the profit yet, but the people and the planet. So I've learned a lot from this pack of wolves and other packs of wolves. For some reasons I don't want to go into now. The place that I've learned the most is wolves, and from 5-year-olds like this. What I see in this picture is the balance, the vision, the present in the moment, you know, the joy, the commitment, everything from this 5-year-old on this surfboard having fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nico, for sharing. A very interesting story indeed. Very courageous as well to walk so many miles across South Africa. I'm sure we will have many questions to ask you later on. But in the interest of time, I would now like to invite our other international speaker, Mr. Michael Vogt.
All right. Good evening to everybody. I keep it rather short for the sake of time. My name is Michael Vogt. I'm 55 years old. Had a corporate career before, started after the studies in management consulting, was partner of one of the big management consulting companies out there. Then decided to change into the industry, in my case, banking. So I was working in asset management and alternative investments. Then I decided to start my own private equity company doing investments in various industries. The last investment was a cosmetics company, which I sold a couple of years ago, did a little bit in early retirement, and then restarted my own beauty company with the idea of a new set of parameters in my mind, creating a much better product solution for customers, for clients. Which brings me to the next point. I've been listening to your definition of sustainability. I think what might be missing there is the aspect of, or the factor of clients. We haven't talked about customers or clients so far, and what they get out of this sustainability thinking. And this is not necessarily better than was there before, because you can definitely engineer a sustainable product for your customers without changing anything, but it just looks better on the outside. Let me give you an example. In the beauty industry, there is this notion of animal testing, and companies create logos for products that are not tested on animals. Let me tell you, this is all bullshit. All cosmetic ingredients that are used in products are tested on animals. And this just comes from the fact that these ingredients are also used in the medical industry, where it's a requirement, a legal requirement to test on animals. So you don't need to test the same ingredients that are already tested on animals for other purposes for the cosmetic products that you produce. It's absolutely unnecessary. But to create a label around a product that is not tested on animals sounds great, and leads the customer towards a more sustainable or better product, which definitely nothing has changed inside of the value chain or of how the products are produced. This is just one example. I can give you many more during the discussion, but I like to stop for the purpose of introduction just here.
Thank you, Michael. That's rather shocking. Buying cosmetics and skincare that is promoted not being tested on animals actually does contain ingredients that have been tested on animals. So thank you for the eye opener. I'd just like you to clarify, your products are promoted as being clean. What does that mean exactly? Clean
is also a marketing notion, of course, but I had to find one, or I had to use one word that sums it all up. For me, clean means without any additives, without any synthetics, and highly enriched as well with meaningful ingredients like probiotics or organic quality oils, for example, instead of just natural quality oils, which provide much better benefits for the skin. I can give you another shocking example in this industry. Around 90, maybe 95% of products that are used in the beauty industry are completely useless. And this comes purely from the fact that if you look at a product, inside of a product, take a cream, for example, you buy 50%, at least 50% water, which is just usual, regular tap water. And when you convert the liter price of water that you buy in a 50 milliliter jar, you easily come up to 1,000 euros or 2,000 euros per liter of water converted from a 50 milliliter jar. So this is also part of the nonsense in this industry. Water really doesn't do anything for the skin, but it's part of the product and has been like that for decades. The rest that is inside a usual product is about 20–30% oils. These oils can be synthetic oils, namely silicone oils, or they can be natural or organic quality. So that varies, of course. And then we have a 20% rest in the product, which is usually filled with additives to make the products more stable, more shelf stable. So continuing with the last 20% in products is usually filled with additives and fillers that have zero skin benefits at all. So to sum it all up, 50% useless water, 20% additives and other synthetics, and if the 30% oil and maybe other actives are very little in concentration and very little in quality, the products have no benefit to the skin.
Okay, thank you. We'll get back to this later. So,
sure.
Thanks for now, Michael. Before we go off on a break, I'd like to ask Annalisa to share something about her background. Annalisa is a veteran for Global Entrepreneurship Week. She was involved in many of our early events when you were working at the university quite a few years ago, Annalisa, weren't you, before you headed out into the world doing freelance work and everything. So over to you.
Thank you, Leonie. Well, I come in after beauty products, maybe I need them all. Yes, I've been part of Global Entrepreneurship Week at the very, very beginning, probably over 12 years ago now. So yes, it's good to be back. Thank you for the invitation. And it's also very interesting to see all the diverse backgrounds here, but all coming up or coming through the idea of sustainability, because clearly it's like a basic element that we are all passionate about. I've been freelancing in the creative industry, as you were saying, for about 15 years now. I wear many hats in the industry. I started from the grassroots, and then somehow I ended up even doing more important jobs, to use the label. I work both locally and a bit across the world, mainly in Europe, but also outside of Europe, thanks to connections that I made in my NGO life, which is another parallel life to my freelance career. Recently, I've been taking on artistic direction roles for big events, festivals mostly. Also this summer I had the pleasure to be the artistic director for the APS Summer Festival, which was requiring sustainability from top to bottom. So that was also probably one of my easiest clients in 15 years to work hand in hand about sustainability, because they were fully convinced about it. So ideally now I use that model with more clients all over the world, but especially in Malta. I do also creative production, stage managing, logistics, depending on the client, depending on the need. And throughout the years, I started to pitch myself as, this is who I am, this is what I stand for, this is what I do, but this is how I do it. And I think slowly, especially in industries like theater, or the large-scale events like conferences, which are industries that consume a lot and also waste a lot, I started to understand how to try and pitch ideas, to tweak small things, to take different decisions, to be able to waste less, consume less, but most importantly, give the same, or if not a better experience to the audiences which we normally cater for. The creative industry is there to, the way I see it, build good memories that last in our audiences. And in recent years, especially, I started to try to make it very clear to the audiences consuming our events or coming to experience festivals or being part of them, that they are consciously consuming something, so they are consciously taking a decision to buy a ticket for something which is greener than something else. And I think unless we speak about these things clearly to our audiences in my industry, probably people don't realize, and people won't even make a different decision. Because of COVID, for example, we started to say, do not print tickets at the door, when everybody else would usually go and buy a ticket physically somewhere or bring it printed. So these are the small little tweaks, which we'll probably get to later, that the creative industry is able to operate differently from a sustainable way. I think what inspired me, the first spark, was about 10 years ago, probably through JCI, Junior Chamber International, which is an international association, an NGO which I am part of. And way back we had this link on a project, a collaboration with the United Nations. Way back, I think they were still the Millennium Development Goals. And that's where my first approach towards sustainability started. And as we went along with the project, I started to realize that everything here makes sense. So why is it so difficult not to live in a win-win space, especially in my industry? So I think that was the first spark that then created the reflections on why we're not doing it, that then instigated the change of how can I do it better or do it differently, to then getting into the almost advocacy role of, listen, this is how I do it and this is how I want to do it for you if you choose me to deliver your event or deliver your festival, whatever it is.
Thank you, Annalisa. Very interesting. In fact, you're right. I don't think many people think about sustainability when attending events. It's, when probably now much more than before, when one buys a product, one might consider elements of is the packaging recycled, is it, is it environmentally sustainable and that sort of thing. But with events, probably it's not yet at the forefront of people's awareness. So well done of venturing into that space.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've had a round of introductions and we know more about what you do, what you're involved in, what social and environmental aims you are trying to attain. Most of you are doing this in a business context, as an enterprise or as a freelancer. And all businesses, all startups in particular, but not just startups, even later along the lifespan of a business, many challenges crop up. Are the challenges faced by social and environmental entrepreneurs any different in your experience? So have you personally experienced any challenges that you think are specifically due to the fact that you are social entrepreneurs or environmental entrepreneurs?
Yeah, because also when Michael was mentioning the clients, I think that's something that I faced in my case. So working on diversity and inclusion and cultural diversity, our clients that just want to tick the box. That is like kind of the etiquette and the stamp. So in my case, they have done a training on gender, disability, and now they want to do something on cultural diversity. And this is a challenge because like I know how important it is, and I want them to understand actually the importance. So I find myself in between. On one side, I say, I go and I do for this client, even if I know that they just want to tick the box, because at least I plant a seed and maybe something they will start thinking about. In any case, like maybe there will be someone in this training or someone among this manager who will start thinking about this in a different way. But sometimes, yes, you see when it's just a surface, and then they really don't, let's say, understand also how good can be for them. So it's not only for either the employees or the reputation. So it's this like doing well while doing good that also for them sometimes is missing. And so this is why I think there is a need for us to promote awareness why this is important and why it is important, not only as a facade, but really as something that bring a change in your organization and in how you operate as an organization.
So at least it's better than nothing that they're doing this.
Exactly.
But there's still a long way to go for them to be truly on board with the whole concept, right?
But that is my experience, yes.
That is your experience. Nico, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, but now from a South African perspective, the mindset has to be broadened. And we're talking about the whole of society in South Africa, because we also have to undo the wrongs of the past with the apartheid system. And this affects like government, corporates, the public, churches, the religious community, down to grassroots level. So what I've learned, one of the most important things, and I've did a lot of research on this, is the mindset of dependency and how to undo that. So that was the intention with the walk. It was like also the words that was just used to plant a seed, to make people start asking questions. You know, to stimulate thinking about it. What are we doing? And it's amazing to discover how many of the efforts currently is actually still supporting or strengthening a mindset of dependency. So to change that and to bring role players in and to design a project to do that. So I had a government agency for entrepreneurship as a full partner. And the, you know, and then the different segments, as you get in touch with them, the openness is there, but you need to stimulate thinking, to change thinking. Within a corporate, you know, people are in a rut. This is how we do it. And now to start asking questions internally, entrepreneurship, how can we do this in a different manner that will serve this bigger picture where we also now have to address the social environment and the ecology and etc. Just conversations, you know, Jürgen Habermas says this very important thing, communication elevates knowledge. And yeah, it's a very interesting process to go forward with that, and enough for now.
No, but I'm very pleased actually that you keep mentioning this mindset, because I also keep mentioning the importance of the entrepreneurial mindset in class with my students as well, because I am well aware that they are not all prepared or interested even in becoming entrepreneurs in the strict sense of the word and actually starting up and running their own business. But I am always insisting that even if they are employed in whatever role, in a management role, if they are a professional, if they're going to go into freelance work, whatever it is, they need to have this entrepreneurial mindset. But we are extending it now also into the social entrepreneurial mindset, that it's not enough to be thinking like an entrepreneur, to take the initiative in general, but also to do good, you know, to create positive impact, as you have been saying. And I know that I have quite a few students who are attending this webinar who are doing a degree in work and human resource management, right? So they are, I think they are really well placed to be social innovation champions, if you like, within their organizations, because if they buy into this, you know, if they really believe that they can start making a change from within the organization, then they can start creating these positive ripples of change through the people who work with them. Roberta, how do you do this? So I know you work as a CSR consultant. How do you inspire organizations to change?
Okay, it's different for everybody, and I think it comes very much. It depends very much on who is leading the organization, on who is leading the initiative. So ultimately, I know this sounds a little bit cliche, but it boils down to personal values, really and truly. So you have those entrepreneurs who don't need convincing; they're the ones who would seek out my help themselves. But then there is the majority, let's say, who need to be convinced. So part of what I do is participation in these kinds of webinars in the media to, first of all, help entrepreneurs, business owners, managers to understand what sustainability means. Very often the term is equated with environmental impact. So just the environmental side, the planet side of sustainability, but there is very little awareness about the different dimensions of sustainability. We have not mentioned the governance aspect, which is becoming more and more prominent as time goes by. So first is helping people in understanding what sustainability is, then how business can impact sustainability in either a positive or negative manner. But then I think the most important part is helping businesses of different sizes different industries understand what's in it for me. Because today, to a certain extent, I'm also a small business owner, and I do understand that, especially for small businesses, because they don't have the resources to spare, they really need to focus on their day-to-day, on what they need to achieve, within their core function of business. So for me, I think the way to engage them, the way to bring them on board, is to help them understand how sustainability is actually going to help them speed up the process to achieving what it is that they set out to achieve for themselves. So we talk a lot about the business case for sustainability. I think there isn't a lot of knowledge about that. It can be rather complex to understand. But we are seeing, for example, the accountancy profession locally starting to really engage with the topic of sustainability. So once the accountants are on board, hopefully everybody else will follow. So the business case for sustainability, and going back to the concept of mindset, yes, sustainability is profitable, but you're not going to profit tomorrow. It's about medium to long-term profitability. So if you're looking at making a quick buck and getting out, probably won't be engaging much in sustainability. But if you're in the game for the long term, then it pays you to shift to a sustainable business model.
Interesting. And Michael mentioned the clients earlier. So maybe, Michael, can you elaborate on the role that clients play in all of this, from your perspective at least?
I'd like to also add a couple of thoughts to the sustainability issue itself, because sustainability, in my point of view, is the major thrust we have bringing our economy forward. The word, although, is taken by large corporations and media, and it's a little bit blurry, and it's relatively easy to achieve because it's not really 100% defined. If you have something that is organic, you can measure organic, but sustainability has various aspects. And like I said before, when you're working in a big corporation, you are measured by quarterly results. At least the management is measured by quarterly results. And this doesn't usually lead to big leaps in innovation. So what it leads to is this check the box mentality, which brings maybe a little bit progress, but on our planet, we need more than just a little bit progress. We need big leaps of innovation happening, and they are happening in various industries. Of course, the car industry, also all the industry that are digitalized more and more. Latest is now the digital finance world with cryptocurrencies. These industries are going through fundamental changes, and inherently, I think they should go towards a more sustainable offering for clients, and at the same time producing real innovative solutions, real innovations. Like in the case of cryptocurrency, a digital currency that is in competition with the government currencies, which we all know usually inflated and usually in debt economies that we're living in right now. So this is the kind of competition I think we need looking forward in our economies, and sustainability is one of the major driving forces there, because without sustainability there will be not much left in a couple of hundred years or a couple of thousand years, how long this global warming might take. So this is my view on sustainability. I just deliver a small little part of it in the consumer industry with my thinking on my products. But the challenge is much bigger for the entire industries, and more the heavy industries, of course, that produce all these CO2 emissions. Because consumer goods are a smaller part of the problem, I would say.
Yes, I mean, it is a major problem that isn't going to be solved overnight with tiny solutions, but every step in the right direction is a step towards a solution. In more recent years, we're seeing also a shift also in terms of focus, in terms of pressure from policymakers towards from a linear economy to a circular economy, which is kind of even a step beyond the 3 Ps of sustainability, actually designing products that rather from the cradle to the grave, from design feeding straight back into their to the origins. But as we're saying, there's still a long way.
There are different movements. There's when you go to university, the first thing you learn is the difference between efficiency and effectiveness. So it's good to be more efficient in a corporate level. Every small step helps on the way, but there's also a big need for bigger leaps, for more effective solutions out there, completely new thinking, and create sustainable solutions in that context. That's
you mentioned university, and I am actually very pleased to report that I have seen a very positive trend in this regard. So when I started teaching here many years ago, I used to speak to my business students, entrepreneurship students about sustainability. I used to be met with surprise or almost disdain in the early days. But now it's completely changed. I don't have the statistics, but there has been a marked increase in the number of business ideas that students submit as assessment for their assessment as assignment projects that are sustainability oriented. So that to me is is a really positive, encouraging trend that restores my faith in humanity, so to speak. It's very encouraging indeed. So students who are listening in, keep up the good trend.
Yes.
Patrizia, you are essentially operating in one of Malta's main industries. You are essentially operating in the tourism industry, yes? But most operators in the tourism industry are not in the sustainability sphere. How does this present opportunities and challenges for you?
Yes, if I can add only something about the client, I would like to say that the clients, as us as clients, we can do a great difference. We can change the market and pushing it towards a more sustainable market, a more sustainable products, because we can choose. For example, as you were saying, I'm operating in a sector that is very unsustainable, and people can choose if buying a ticket for a boat tour that is very cheap but unsustainable because it doesn't respect the environment, or buying our ticket that is more expensive but that offer an experience in respect of the environment and with all the plus, having a marine biologist on board and learning also something during the day. So it's challenging because it's difficult to let people understand the difference. But when they understand this, it's very nice. We have people coming back and coming again and again, bringing parents, children, elder to live this experience. So it's not easy. It's not easy to work in this environment, but it's possible, and I think that things are changing slowly, but they are changing.
Thank you. Annalisa, are you in agreement on this topic, or do you have a different experience coming from the events?
Yes, and especially because I think sustainability should be an added value rather than an afterthought, and probably for many clients or many even people who consume, so tourists, whoever is, I don't know, like audiences, for example, sometimes it is an afterthought unless, as Patrizia is saying, you give them the opportunity to choose. I always wish that we're working in an environment or in a world that where the SDGs are a license to operate, because that would mean having a measure between who pollutes and who pollutes less, or who creates projects which are socially impactful and others which are only maybe using the society and using the environment to their profitability. I think it's a question of also breaking it down into small, simple actions. It's like, you know, you're becoming a vegan or you're becoming a vegetarian, you replace. And I think that's how probably we should go around also educating our audiences or our clients into exchanging or subsidizing one decision with another. But yes, I am in agreement with most of what Patricia was saying, because I think it is a question of being able to choose and being able to have a choice that is greener or more socially applicable, rather than just consuming for the sake of spending less money, because I think in reality, we would all at the end of the day be paying more for the choices we do.
Interesting. Nico, your incredible long walk project. What are some of the challenges that you encountered during that venture, and how did you overcome them? I'm sure you encountered quite a few.
Well, indeed, the whole project was designed to have all the elements of what you need for enterprise, for entrepreneurship. So the vision, the commitment, the dedication, the planning, the strategy, communication, you know, all of that was like challenges. The financial part, I mean, I don't know, it was, if I think of an element, I know it is built in there, and this was built on the Camino. So I often refer to my Camino mindset. And this is what we need, that kind of awareness. If you just think about the traffic and the danger there was, like for close to 3,000 kilometers, just traffic. There was another guy who also started, while I was busy, started doing a similar thing, and he got killed on the third day by traffic. That probably traffic was the #1 danger. Then there was like all sorts of other things, but the whole project was, it's still absolutely managing my mind, and created an awareness. And it means that you have to dive into knowledge. If we think about sustainability, and I just want to pull it through to the conversation now, the long walk and what it brought to me, what it actually gave to me as a gift, to be attentive, to seek knowledge and to change strategies, change ways. This is what we need. If I can say what the ecology is currently showing us, then the world is actually like a person that just got the news of a brain tumor and having 6 months to live. We haven't got hundreds of years. I've got slides that I could show you right now. I've got it prepared. I mean, we are already at the 2-degree rise in climate change. The effects of that, the spin-offs of that, we need to pay attention to that right now. And we need to create that kind of awareness, whether it is from Roberta's angle, which I have a lot of respect for. I'm going to do some research in South Africa. Is there like a company like hers doing the same kind of work here? I'm not even aware of it, being in this field and doing research and work every day on it. I'm not aware. So what do you find when you approach a person with this news of you've got a brain tumor and there's like 6 months left? You've got denial. People don't want to hear this, that I've got to close my business. If Roberta's walking into my business and, you know, telling me I've got to close, I've got to find another business or change ways, I don't have the energy for that. I don't have the resources for that. I'm just going to block her out. You know, I don't want to hear this news. This is where the world is actually at this point in time. And we've got this message last week, Greta's message at the Global Forum or at the United Nations. We need to create that kind of awareness. So this is where mindset is so important for me. And it's a specific kind of thinking that we need to develop. We've got so many thinking models, not only lateral and design thinking. We need to come up with a new way of thinking, and we're going to be forced into that, whether we know it or not. We may all be still in the process of denial, but we don't have time left. Sustainability is going to change the world. This whole concept and the discussion, we won't have a choice, like we didn't have a choice in terms of closing down with COVID. So it is possible, it can happen again, and knowledge again. For the first time now, we know that COVID is transferred to animals and it can be transmitted back to human beings. In Denmark, the whole population of minks was like destroyed recently. In Iowa, in America, 80% of the white-tailed deers are infected with COVID. And it can be transmitted again back to human beings. So what's going to happen when the mutations of COVID is going to go that way, because we don't pay attention to the bigger picture, that this is just part of it. I could go on and on.
The ecosystem, the environmental ecosystem.
Exactly.
I'd actually like to ask a question related to the effects of COVID in a moment, but I'm aware that Viviana must leave in about 5 minutes. She has another commitment at 7:30. So Viviana, maybe you can share some final reflections before you go, if there is maybe some practical advice that you would give to someone who would like to, well, to do well while doing good. Any final words?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So I think that the most important thing, because yeah, you mentioned also your students probably are here attending. I think that the message probably that we all want to pass, that it is possible, so you can do it well while doing good. And it's even more possible, let's say, if you find also the right people that can support you. I think this is, for me, my experience also, especially like here in Malta and out with SIAM. So you feel you're not alone. You feel that there are people that have been already there. So they are already facing some challenges, people where you can learn, or people that can also, you can share what you're going through, and they can help you. Even I always say that people believe in my business in Malta before I started to believe in. I just had the idea and they were like, yes, you can do it. And I'm like, I'm not sure, but yes, you can do it. So sometimes you need these right people, and maybe they're not your family. In many cases, they're not your family members, and maybe they're also not your friends, but they're like people that actually they share the same passion for entrepreneurship. And I agree also, it's not for everyone. And this is also, it's not a point of being, or I'm a failure, I cannot do it. This is also a matter of like understanding who you are and what you want to be and become, but you can still be an entrepreneur. So inside your company, be the one that helped to change for the sustainability, for social innovation, for everything that we have discussed today. So I think you believe it, do it, and find also the right people that can support you. This is my message, and I'm very sorry that I have to leave. It was very, very interesting, and I hope there will be other events and panel like this. So thank you for having me.
No, thank you very much for your time, Viviana. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, on something that Viviana just mentioned, maybe Roberta and Patrizia can answer. This SEAM or SEAM, how is the correct way to pronounce it? Because I just read it as SEAM. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. Is membership open to anyone who is interested in social entrepreneurship, including students, or do members have to actually have a social enterprise in place? How does it work?
It's open to anyone who's interested in the topic. So anyone who identifies as a social entrepreneur, anyone who is a regular entrepreneur but maybe wants to make the shift to become maybe more social or environmentally oriented, students who are just interested in the topic, academics, people who are aspiring to be entrepreneurs. So anyone really who's interested.
And what do you do? I mean, what does membership offer? Do you organize events, mentoring?
Yes, okay. So I'm just going to explain a little bit how it came about and then what we are offering. So we came about, so to speak, after the project, which I mentioned in my presentation, the Anesia project, because I get very frustrated when there are these EU-funded projects, which, you know, have a start and an end date. A lot of work is done, a lot of recommendations are made, and then very often all is forgotten and people move on to the next project, and that's just about it. So I didn't want that to happen. So I spoke to a few people who had somehow been involved in the project, either they had been interviewed or attended the event. And I tested out the idea of setting up this association. There was interest and it was done. So the first thing that we focused on was liaising with the government and with the authorities to ensure that the sector becomes acknowledged, so to speak, locally, so that there is a legal framework for social entrepreneurs, which we're still lacking, but now we have a bill in Parliament. So that is something we feel we've also done for our members, because one of the stumbling blocks that they have in terms of improving and growing is the fact that they are not recognized as an entity. They're not a business, they're not an NGO, they're kind of like something in between. So if there are grants, for example, for NGOs, they would not be eligible. For normal, regular businesses, they don't really fit the terms. So it's important that we have that framework for them. And then after the legal framework, obviously we need to create this famous ecosystem. So we know what we need, we know what our entrepreneurs want. So we want to continue working with the different stakeholders to create this ecosystem. And that's where the answer to your question comes about. So we are working to be able to provide services to our clients, aside from being a voice for them, also give them tangible services which they need in terms of business support, coaching, professional services. Obviously, they cannot be entirely free of charge because we also need to be financially sustainable. But what we do as a benefit for membership is that we make sure that they are provided to our members at better rates, so to speak. We also started having in-person events now, where members can come together, share ideas, network, maybe come up with collaborative projects between them. I think that's really important. So we'll be doing that regularly going forward, hopefully, unless we have other disruptions. That's about it, basically. So the support services and the networking and having a voice for the sector, if I have to kind of summarize them. I don't know, maybe Patricia wants to add
So
something.
if anybody's interested in joining, I suppose they can come to the website and there's contact details and more information, right?
Yes, we have the website.
You can type it into the chat box.
I'll do that. There's the membership form, and we're also open to interns. So if anybody would like, some experience in the sector, we're also open to that.
Very good. Okay, so I'm looking at my watch and it's 7:30, and according to the program, it is now time for questions from the audience. And so I would like to ask our attendees, if you have any questions, raise your hand and I will enable your microphone, or you can simply type into the Q&A. I think there's already one in the Q&A. Okay, so it's good evening, dear panelists. Thank you for your valuable insights so far. I was wondering whether you have noticed an increase in your team's engagement and productivity once the sustainable practices are ingrained within the operations of your company. More specifically, I am interested in exploring the topic of aligning the individual's purpose and values to the purpose and sustainable practices of the businesses, and whether there is a correlation in your workforce's engagement at the place of work. Would one of you in particular like to answer that?
I think it's a very good question, and we use the engagement both of employees and also of existing and prospective customers in the business case for sustainability. So I think this is a very relevant question. In my experience, it all depends on how well the sustainability efforts of the company are communicated. So when we build a program for sustainability, we do an exercise which we call stakeholder identification. So we identify all the different stakeholders of the company, including the employees, because they're very important stakeholders. And then we need to have a communication plan in place to make sure that all the different stakeholders are aware of the different efforts of the company vis-a-vis sustainability. So the engagement increases or otherwise, depending on how well that communication plan is executed.
Yeah, this is this is a new territory. So I would say we're all going to learn, and any effort is better than nothing, you know. So think of something, whenever you make people talk about something, there's an awareness coming. And in the process, we will refine our strategies to become more effective. But I think we are all in a learning curve here of what's going to work. And then you've got like different environments as well, different corporate environments or other groups. But this is the most important for me, whether it's the walk or this or that, is that the fun and enjoyment must be the best part of this. We must enjoy this period of uncertainty and chaos and whatever, because this is how creativity works. So this is a personal test to all of us, you know, that the joy must be present every moment of this discovery. I hope that's also encouraging for her efforts.
Thank you, Nico. Patrizia?
We are a very small company. We are only 2 employees, and so obviously we share good practice. But what we can do when we are on board or we have courses, etc., we share best practice with our guests, with the kids, students, etc. And what we can see is that they are very keen to learn this new, let's say, way to go towards a more sustainable lifestyle. What we suggest always is do step by step. So starting with the smallest one, and when you are able to do this one, add another one, and then add another one. So there is a slow but steady movement towards a more sustainable lifestyle. So this is how we cope with our clients, with our guests, with our students, and also with my family, with my children, with everyone in my life.
Thanks, Patrizia. Rome wasn't built in a day, as they say, huh? Annalisa?
Yes, just to answer the question, but I take it more industry specific. In our case, when it comes to theatre, for example, I think we're seeing, especially locally, more moving towards the circular economy. Why? Because we keep on doing shows after shows, back to back. Everybody needs mostly the same items. Everybody is rigging a show, de-rigging it, and the day after, someone else comes back and rig 50%, 80% of what you had in the previous show. So I think we're seeing a bit of a movement there. It's still not framed or contained properly, so it's more of a one-to-one, or if you know the production coming in before you or the one coming after you, where the connections are made. But I think there is space, there is vacuum for this to be monetized probably as well by sharing content when it comes to physical content, so like things related to staging and everything in between. But then also maybe taking it a steps in a smaller step. Many actors and many crew members would abide with no plastic policy, for example, so bringing their own mug, washing it before they leave, to even simply adhere to using the preferred pronoun, for example, on the lanyard when it comes to getting access to backstage or all access, depending on the case. So I think small steps which can be easily attainable, we do see, at least I see, a movement in the right direction when it comes to the industry specific in the creative industry.
Thank you, Annalisa. Michael, did you want to add anything to this?
Here we go. I like to circle back to my initial comment about customers and clients focus on sustainability, and I just went on Google Trends and looked up some aspects of some features of products where you can always test how high they are in popularity on Google Trends worldwide. So I typed in sustainable, ecological, organic, natural, and vegan. It came to me quite as a surprise. In these 5 buzzwords or 5 keywords, what customers are looking for, natural is the -- 1 by far, which is true and I can understand it because it's the broadest term. Then it was quite surprising for me to see that sustainable is still quite low on the bottom. It's just the second last. The last of these 5 words is ecological, what's on consumers' minds. Then it's sustainable, number 2 from the bottom. Number 3 is organic. And then, quite to my surprise, the biggest move from 2004 to present is the keyword vegan. So vegan seems to be a highly important word for customers at the moment on a global level. So I think coming back to sustainable as a keyword, or sustainability as the issue, I think the global movement has to make sure that this becomes not just a corporate buzzword of checking boxes, because then it has no real impact. It just sounds great. Clearly, consumers don't have sustainability on their agenda to buy products yet. So there is a global awareness campaign probably necessary, maybe to be led by the United Nations or any other organizations, that this is really the key word. And it needs maybe some more sharp definitions, because sustainable is kind of convenient for bigger corporations to take as a buzzword and check some boxes, and all of a sudden you create some logos and all of a sudden your products are sustainable. So there is a road ahead, what I can see from just my short little research on the fly.
Thank you, Michael. That was very interesting. Do we have any more questions from the audience? Okay, so while you think of a few more questions, earlier we mentioned COVID, the impact of COVID. Different businesses were impacted in different ways. Can you share your experiences, how COVID affected your business? And, I don't know if it could actually be an opportunity, served as an opportunity for certain businesses as well.
Would like me to start right away?
Yes, please.
In consumer markets, COVID has led to much more online sales. That's the most obvious consumer reaction, and quite a necessity during times. But it seems to be a sustainable trend that online sales have grown pretty much, which is a change in the value chain of manufacturers and especially retailers. In the end, they need to reorient their business models towards towards more online sales. That has been the greatest effect in the industries that I'm working in right now.
Thank you, Michael.
Welcome.
Would anyone else like to? I don't know, Annalisa, in your sector for sure, artists were heavily affected by yes, because all the events were cancelled, weren't they? What was your experience?
Yes, I think probably is the most industry which was hard hit, and even now we're still not operating at a full or at a normal, even close to normal. We're getting there slowly, but depends obviously on many things. Sometimes we do a step in the right direction, and then if numbers go back up, we're again the first ones to close probably. So yes, the impact at the beginning was that our business is cancelled, that we are no longer of importance or of good use for the populations, for life, really. So then the shift into taking everything online was probably also the learning curve that the industry needed, and I would say the push that the industry needed to start and implement some technological aspects into the industry itself. I feel that the industry needed a shock. And if it wasn't COVID, probably we would have moved even much slower into technological advancements, into using technology for the greater good. So eliminating the use of certain items which we would usually, I don't know, print programs, where then you use 50% of them, or people just use them for the event and leave them behind them. That is all now shifted online. So I think the opportunity is there, and probably is there to stay, because it's cheaper. So your budget is impacted less. But then it's also a question of understanding how your event is still accessible to those who maybe don't have a smartphone, or those who maybe do not have the capacity or the ability to reach your event through the technology route. So I think it's a question there to also, in my industry, understand a bit how to create a balance.
Keeping the options open for those individuals who don't have access, but I think the vast majority in today's day and age do have access, and I think because of the pandemic, we have now become much more accustomed to doing things digitally, and using much less paper, paperless everything essentially. Now, I mean, I have to admit, even in the past, I was much more comfortable marking hard copy assignments, for example, and dissertations. Now, since COVID, I'm perfectly used to doing everything off a screen.
Yes. I think in our industry as well, which was also now is also becoming cost effective, is the use of theatre for less number of days, less number of weeks, when we're seeing rehearsals being done online, with even maybe bringing in foreign acts for a shorter span of time. So maybe even that, the environmental impact there is also marked on your not only balance sheet but also in practice. So I think yes, and probably we had to be agile to do this shift, when before a year and a half ago it was probably close to impossible to tell a producer, tell a director, listen, let's do the first 2 weeks before we get off script for a play, for example, for a theatre production, let's do them online. When now it's almost became comfortable to, yes, let's just do them online, and when we meet, we're off script, for example. So I think that is also probably a shift which is here to stay.
Thanks, Annalisa. Would our other panelists like to add anything to this question regarding effects of COVID? And Nico, I know that you were affected by COVID because you were stranded in the United States, weren't you? And you use that as an opportunity to write your book.
Well, that's the thing about social entrepreneurship. You never get into a corner, not even with COVID. Then you reframe the situation and you write a book, which is going to make me more effective than anything else than I would have used the time, So this is part of the mindset message that we should be focused now on how to unleash the potential. And that is much more, I'm afraid to say, among the youth than the older generation. One of the questions I had, and I reacted to it, was how can we encourage the youth to be more aware of? And I'm afraid I would like to turn that question around and say, how are we going to make the older generation to pay more attention to this? Because they are the leaders, they are the owners of the businesses that Dr. Roberta referred to, the decision makers, the important people. But so the older generation was the thing. The message from the youth summarized during this walk, and I'm talking about throughout the whole country, 200 schools, summarized in one paragraph, it was like this: please ask the older generation to let go of their grudges and conflicts and focus on what needs to be done to open up opportunities for us. Now, again, referring to us, she's not 16-year-old by now, Greta, but her powerful message, the powerful message from the youth, I think there's much more of an awareness among the youth, and it's harder to change ways of older generations. So we've got this mindset challenge that's like upside down. In terms of that, coming back to South Africa is now like designing 3 courses. And the 3 courses are all working towards each other, but I would like to focus on the one. We have a major social asset in South Africa called the Nelson Mandela Legacy. This is a global social asset. If you think of, it's a United Nations International Day to Nelson Mandela. So focusing on him, and now the one course and project is then called Be a Nelson. And I want to go big with this one. I want to getting the global community involved, in different ways as mentor coaches. It's already mentioned that that's a powerful tool, but to explore the potential among the youth, and who knows, the answer to COVID or climate and sustainability will probably be more coming from the youth than from the older generation to unleash this potential. I think that's why I love to work with the youth. If you think of what David Bohm, and the physicist, said, about the implicate order in creation. If you think of quantum mechanics, the principle of interconnectedness, then we're talking about we have the ability and the knowledge. Now you can go back to Plato. I mean, we have what's necessary to bring about these changes, but we have to think in a different way. We have to renew our thinking.
Nico, if I may respond to that, I agree with a lot of what you said, but I was also thinking that maybe we shouldn't be overgeneralizing about generations, because in reality, the really older generations were all about sustainability, weren't they? They did things the natural way. They had a circular economy. They used to have a pair of shoes and they used to repair it, and they used to use, they didn't have 50 pairs of shoes and throw them away after one season. So I think we went from one extreme to another extreme. And now perhaps we're going around full circle, but even with the younger generation, true, there is a segment of the younger generation that is very socially and environmentally conscious and driven. But unfortunately, I think there is also a segment of the younger generation who are very entitled, or feel very entitled, and really need to have their mindsets changed as well. So I don't like overgeneralizing in any shape or form. I think that the message needs to be loud and clear across the board, and we need to get the converted to come on board and contribute in every way that they can. And on this note, I'm conscious of time, so I would like to start wrapping up with by asking you the same question that I asked Viviana before she logged out. So do you have any final words of advice to anyone who would like to do well while doing good in whichever context they happen to be in, whether they are students, whether they are employees, whether they are entrepreneurs? Roberta, would you like to go first?
If you like, sure. I think my first suggestion would be, if one is coming up with an idea or developing an idea for an enterprise, our colleague mentioned it, think more about the client. So what value are you bringing to the client? Because sometimes we're very passionate about something ourselves. So at the initial stages, we're doing it more for ourselves. but we're not going to be selling to ourselves. So we really need to make sure that whatever we're offering adds value to others. That's the one thing. And I think the second is maybe the most overlooked, is have a really solid business plan. So the business aspect, you know, the financials, the marketing, the initial stages are the toughest. So it's very important, I think, to have a proper business plan, even with the help of maybe experts who can help, and then work on that. And last but not least, I think the element of support. I think entrepreneurship can be quite lonely, again, especially in the initial stages. So having a support network, somebody to bounce off ideas with, even just moral support, I think it's really important.
Thank you, Roberta. Patrizia?
Okay, I agree 100% with Roberta. Obviously, what I can add is something that I repeat every time, is that we can do profit with purpose. So doing profit is not always a bad thing, but is something that we need at the end of the month. We need a wage like all the other people. And so we can do something that we love as our job. Obviously, with all the recommendation of Roberta, so with a good business plan, with support and everything. And then I recommend a young entrepreneur to never give up, because there are a lot of failure, a lot of stops and start and stops again. And so never give up, be always curious, and never stop to study and learn always and ever. This is what I can say.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrizia. Annalisa?
Yes, I think probably the first step for me would be follow your heart and don't be afraid to take the right decisions at the right time. But then it's also a question of starting with sustainability in mind, starting from idea stage, from design stage, not having it as an afterthought if you want to do this properly and for real. But I think it's also a question of finding a mentor, finding the right mentor that can open up the windows of opportunity when it comes to sustainability, connecting you with the right people when it comes to sustainability. Ask questions, but then also act, because if we end up only discussing and thinking and studying and understanding but not acting, I think we'll never move forward. So I think, again, don't be afraid to take the first step, because it will be the first step of the journey that then starts.
Thank you, Annalisa. Michael and his fairy friend.
Yeah, but to summarize, maybe we have also younger people in the audience. It's the time of sustainability. I mean, it's a positive notion. It's a little bit different than the ecological movement was in the 80s, which came more from a socialist movement. Sustainability is a market term, and it's time to take it up. And there are various industries. I mean, I just take my background in beauty and cosmetics, but there are so many other industries which are not yet sustainable, really sustainable. They might have the sticker on it that they are sustainable, but we live in tremendous times. We can have a sustainable revolution in many industries with real change, not just stickers on the wall or corporate bullshit bingo, which we always said in bigger companies. You know, when you have the cross section done with all the bingo words, you're a successful manager. But for entrepreneurs, it's the time for entrepreneurs to really think about and make sustainable solutions work. And I think the financial world is moving also in this direction. I mean, sustainability or sustainable solutions is a buzzword also for private equity investors for raising capital. And in these times, crypto or the digital revolution is coming with just new highs in Bitcoin at the moment, but it's also a sustainable, in a different sense, sustainable world that is created there, which also gives access to capital for entrepreneurs. And so we live in exciting times. So it's a positive statement, I think, for sustainability for the future. the awareness just needs to be raised a little bit more about this topic in the general public. I think this is key.
Agreed. Thank you, Michael. And last but not least, Nico's final words of advice.
I don't want to repeat myself about you must enjoy what you're doing, and I'm specifically thinking about the students listening in. But what I was thinking of sharing with them is just the importance of research. And in current times, we even have like new research methodologies. So the mixed methods methodology, where you combine qualitative and quantitative information, I would like to emphasize that there's like new possibilities opening up to work with multidisciplinary approach and to gather your information from more than one discipline. So important. We can't afford to work like in the old ways. We have to bring into this, if we talk about a bigger picture, it must consist of multidisciplinary information and knowledge, and then to explore from there on. So this is exciting times. I would like to emphasize that there's a threat. There's a huge threat to us. That's why sustainability is the focus. But it is also exciting times to renew. And the renewal is not just like in the global picture. It starts with me. It starts with, am I prepared to question myself in my ways, in my thinking, and to be proved wrong so many times, make mistakes, but it must stay an exciting journey.
Thank you, Nico. Thank you all very, very much. Thanks also to SEAM for supporting this event. Thank you to all our panelists for sharing your words of wisdom. Thank you to our attendees for joining us, and I hope that you found this event interesting.